Hello, I'm Professor Benavides, and I want to go ahead and give you a small review of Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is about repetition, so we'll cover different kinds of loops. And after I go over the chapter, I'll show you some example code. So we'll cover while, do while, and for. The while loop can be seen in Alice as well as in Java. The while loop is typically referred to as a pretest. The for loop is also found in both Alice and in Java, and it can be thought of by many as a simplification because you get a chance to see everything you need all in one place. Let's go over the logic of these. We'll start off with the while, first of all. When you look at it in a flow chart, you'll notice that the test occurs at the top. That's why it's referred to as a pretest. Here's what the syntax would look like for an example program, which prints hello 1 through hello 5. Notice that we have a counter outside the loop, and the counter must be incremented in the loop. Now, what happens here sometimes is people forget to increment the counter. Can you imagine here, like say, for example, if I set 1 to counter here, and first time I come in here, of course, it's 1. And if I forget to increment it, guess what? It'll always be 1. So you'll end up in an endless loop. So the do while pretty much will end up, can end up doing the same thing as the pretest. It's referred to as the post test because if you'll notice here, the Boolean condition is tested after the body. This is the one that will always execute at least one time, regardless of the condition. The first one may never execute if the condition is false. The for loop by many is thought of as a simplification because you don't have to be initializing a counter outside the body and incremented. Everything you need is in the first line, your initialization, your test, and your incrementation. Graphically, it's seen this way. And as far as an example is concerned, for example, I can go ahead and initialize and perform a test and increment. The author of your book walks you through a very simple example of specifying hello 1 through 5, not only in a while, but a do while and a for loop. I'm going to go ahead and show you this in code in just a minute. So that's basically the chapter. She closes with a discussion of nested loops, which is one loop inside of another loop. And here's an example of that. I'll show you this in live code in just a minute. And then she shows you the break statement. The older book also had the continue statement, and that was eliminated here. So that's pretty much the end of this. Let me go ahead and go over to NetBeans and let's go ahead and take a quick look at some code. All right, so chapter 5, what I did is I put things in methods. We haven't covered that yet, but basically what we have here is I put in different example programs and different methods, and I will uncomment the one I want to run. So the first one I want to run here is the while loop. So this while loop sets 1 to counter. These are very similar examples that are in the book, if not the examples in the book. Many times I just simplify them a little bit more. So the first thing I do is I initialize a counter, and then I notice that this is a pretest. And I come into it and I say hello 1, right? And then I increment the counter to 2, and it continues to increment. Let me go ahead and run this. So I go to run and run the file. So as you can see, it says hello 1 through hello 5. That was what was expected. Very simple, to the point. Let me go ahead and comment this one out, and I'm going to go to the next one and on comment that one. So needless to say, this is the post test, and it does the same thing. It's got a counter. This is the one that will execute always one time. See how it says do, then it does the test. The other one above here has the test above. So this one up here on the top, it may never execute. Like, when would it never execute? Let's say I put the counter on this first one to 7. So is 7 less than or equal to 5? It may, this will not, it will never execute given given that I put 7 in counter. Okay. So those are that's the major distinction between the pretest and the post-test. The for loop is the next one. So let's just go ahead and go over the, well, I guess did I run this one? I don't remember if I did or not. So let me go ahead and run that one for you. And as you can see, it does the same thing. Hello 1 through hello 5. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this one and then uncomment the next one. Okay. So this for loop, let's go over the code first. We have initialization, the test, and then the incrementation. Those are the 3 parts that you need to memorize. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying hello 1 through hello 5. So the first time I come in here, it says hello 1. Then it increments and tests. So is 2 less than or equal to 5? Yes. So it increments the counter and continues. And this loop will exit at what? At 6. So it'll come up here to 6. The counter will increment to 6, and it'll say, is 6 less than or equal to 5? No. So it does not go into the body of the loop. That's a good test questions that many times you see on exams and programming is, what is the value of the counter at the termination of the loop? Okay. I guess I'll go ahead and run it. And as you can see, it does the same thing. Okay, it's coming up to the top. And let's go ahead and run the next one. This next one is called for loop prints even numbers. It's from your book. Let's take a look at it. And what she has here is she initializes num at 2. I think she went to a much higher number when I simplified this. I'm only going up to 20 and I'm incrementing by 2. She may have done some other kind of incrementation on here. So let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see here, it says num is 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way to 20. Okay. So you can use a loop to work with a variety of numbers and a variety of ranges. Let's go to the next one on here. So you can see putting things in modules like this gives you a very organized way of demonstrating something. Loop, for loop, multiple. Now what was that about? Let's take a quick look at that. And this has to do with the idea that oh yes, multiple initializations and incrementations. Okay, so in this particular one, we have, notice where the semicolon is on this. We have int I gets 0, comma, then j gets 0, then we get the semicolon. To whereas above we just said int number gets 2, semicolons. Those are the 3 parts up here. And these 3 parts here, I have multiple initializations. So I'm initializing I and j, okay? I'm performing one test and I'm incrementing I and j. This looks like something that I would probably see in a 2-dimensional array or something like that, okay? Let's go ahead and run that and see what it looks like. Okay, so what it does is it puts 2 things in here. I think she had some text. I took that out because I think she said something like the answer is. I just went right for the code here where she's going through the indexes and she's performing a mathematical process of addition, and that's pretty much what that one does. It's not a format that you would probably use a whole lot, but it is in your book. Let's go ahead and do another one here, the nested. Okay, let's look at the code first. And in the nested one, she's got a loop inside of a loop. I went out of my way to make sure this is very clear here. We have an inner loop and an outer loop. Okay, And so what she does is she loops the inner loop, as you can see, 3 times from 0 to 3, which would give you 4. And then, you know, so let's just go ahead and run it and see what it looks like. Did I undo it? Yeah, nested loops. So we'll go run the file. And here's the code. Okay, so you have an outer loop, which is, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then the inner loop, which would be 1, 2, 3 at indexes 0, 1, and 2. Okay. All right, so that's the nested loop. And then lastly, she talked about the break statement. But she doesn't really apply it anywhere, but I'll show it to you anyway. And she also used to show it in conjunction with the continue statement. You know, so I went ahead and put them both in there for you. So basically, you've got a loop, and when it reaches a particular number, and she went to a really big number, and I went ahead and just cut it down to 10. And so when it's going to get to 4, it's going to break, so it's not going to print that number. The continue, or not print that number, it's going to stop, right? It's going to stop. And this one here, continue, when it gets to that number, it's not going to print that number, and it's going to continue thereon. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. And so once it gets to 4, it breaks, right? And then the other one, which would be the continue, once it gets to 4, it continues to the next line of code. So if you'll see here, it says 1, 2, 3, and of course 4, right? So it went ahead and skipped that. So that's the distinction. Those are the sample code snippets from her book. I went ahead and just typed them in from her book. You should be doing pretty much the same thing. If you see some code that she's got on there, you should pretty much be typing it in. The major components of this chapter is a distinction between the while loop and the do while loop, as well as the for loop. Those ones you definitely need to understand how to do. Okay, but other than that, that's all I have to say about this particular chapter. Thank you. Goodbye.